Good day, everyone. I am Maria Crisabel P. Abatayo.
I am Christian Nino P. Baggio.
I am Jeremy L. Andales.
So, for today, we are going to talk about the self from various philosophical perspectives. So, basically, we are going to take a look at the self from different disciplines, but we'll begin by looking at the perspective of philosophy. So, let us start. Before we go to the different philosophical perspective, first, let us know what is philosophy. So, philosophy comes from the Greek word philos, which means loving, and sophos, which means wise. So, quite literally, the term philosophy means love of wisdom. Philosophy employs the inquisitive mind to discover the ultimate causes, reasons, and principles of everything. Also, philosophy is an activity people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths about themselves, the world in which they live, and their relationships to the world and each other. Philosophy is the study or creation of theories about basic things such as the nature of existence, knowledge, and thought, or about how people should live or how to deal with particular situation. Initially, the term referred to any body of knowledge. In this sense, philosophy is closely related to religion, mathematics, natural science, education, and politics. Historically, philosophy encompassed all bodies of knowledge, and a practitioner was known as a philosopher. So now let us talk about the philosophical perspective of self. The philosophy of self is the study of the many conditions of identity that make one subject of experience distinct from other experiences. The self is sometimes understood as a unified being essentially connected to consciousness, awareness, and agency. The psychology of self is the study of either the cognitive, or affective representation of one's identity, or the subject of experience. The earliest formulation of the self in modern psychology derived from the distinction between the self as I, the subjective knower, and the self as me, the object that is known. The self is defined as a subject that thinks. Philosophical thinking strongly emphasizes clear formulation of ideas and problems, selection relevant data, and objective methods for assessing ideas and proposals. That's all, and the next is all about the philosophers and their perspective in life, which will be discussed by Christian.
So, Greek philosophers. Those who study philosophy are perpetually engaged in asking, answering the growing for their answer to life. They are the ones who seriously question by myths and move away from them in attempting to understand reality and respond to the eternal question of curiosity, including the question of self. So, the first philosopher is Socrates. Socrates concerned more with the problem of the self. The first philosophers who engage in a systematic questioning about the self. The true task of the philosophers is to know oneself. Every man composed of body and soul. So, the first one is Socrates. He is concerned more than with the problem of the self. We may have familiar with the Socratic dialogue, back in our senior high school days, where he used dialogues and arguments to arrive at specific conclusion regarding some things where universal truth prevails. Sa pagunahuna niya daw, in aiming to obtain the philosophical understanding of oneself, he always questioned himself kung unsa jud ang tinuod, the ultimate goal or task in living, that is to know oneself there. He believed that every man is composed of body and the soul. Naakom ni duha ka komposisyon ng tao according niya. Philosophically, it is the body and soul, where the soul is the permanent composition and the identity of oneself. And atong kinabuhi is run through our soul, and of course, a man wouldn't be a man if he doesn't have a body. Where kaning body is the temporary vessel of the soul. Mao ni ang kumbaga garapon sa atong soul para mapurma kung unsa ta karon. Each of us has our own soul, which describes our characteristic, attitudes, perceptions, and inner capacities. Unya, kaning body is just a temporary vessel sa kuno. Mabitaw nang giingon nila nga, pamatay ta, atong lawas ray mamatay, pero atong kalag na apa. There will still be soul without a body, but there will be no man without both, which is soul and body. As understanding our eternal and external composition philosophically could help us understand the perfection of ourselves. So, Plato, Socrates' student and who support the idea that man is a dual nature of body and soul. He added three components to the soul, namely the rational soul, spirit part, appetitive soul. So because of the influence and teachings of Socrates, another philosopher has emerged. Plato, his students, and a believer of Socrates' body and soul composition of man. Though he believed that perspective, nakanahon na siya that ang soul, which is the permanent composition, would not just be a soul in general. Na jud siya laing parts which dictates our internal characteristic and internal perceptions. These are the rational part of the soul, the spirit part of the appetitive soul, and the national the self. Mao ni ang part sa soul nga in charge on how we think, how we perceive, and how our intellect develops. We become rational human being because of this component of the soul. Think of this as the mind or brain. So the spirited part, mao ni ang component na soul nga in charge sa emotions. What we feel, think of this as the heart. The appetitive soul is the component of the soul where mao diri gagikan ang atong mga desires, atong wants, the worldly desires to bring of fantasy including money, sex, some iPhone 12, makagraduate. It all comes from the appetitive soul. Think of this as the veins. All these components really do compose soul, where atong pagkatao gi-divide ani diri. Ang body, diba, is just a vessel. Mao nang soul jud na ang mukuan sa tao. Regardless of how we look externally, the internal philosophical compositions matters. Augustine of Hippo agreed that man is of bifurcated nature. The body is bound to die on earth, and the soul is to anticipate living eternally in a realm of spiritual bliss and communion with God. So, si Augustine of Hippo, he believed that man is bifurcated in nature. Mutuo sad siya sa body and soul nila Socrates and Plato. Mutuo siya nga ang body is just a temporary vessel, and that the soul that residing it is eternal and permanent even when there is no body. So what makes Augustine of Hippo being a relevant and contributed to the philosophical perspective of the self is that he believed that man is not just a man, not just a physical thing, but a meaningful thing. He called this the matter and form. matter as in science is anything that occupies space. Yes, it's true. Our body, the book, the chair, everything that we see and don't see, everything in the universe, the tangible and intangible ones are all matters. It is everything that makes up the universe. But what does that matter do in our universe? In our world where it exists? So, may exist ba? Well, that's what the form is. The form is speaking about the essence of why that certain object or thing or human or something exists. The chair is a chair. There are a lot of construction of chairs, but what makes a chair become a chair? It's the chairness that makes it a chair. Pwede siya malingkuran, magamit and all, but it is still a chair. It is what it is.
A philosopher named Saint Thomas Aquinas believed that man is composed of two parts, matter or hyle, and form or morph. Next is René Descartes, the father of modern philosophy. He believed that the human person is having a body and mind. In his view, the body is nothing else but a machine that is attached to the mind. Descartes famously postulated two kinds of substance in the universe, that is, res extensa and res cogitans. Res extensa is roughly physical world, while the res cogitans is roughly mind and consciousness. These two kinds of substances is called dualism. The next philosopher is David Hume. He is a Scottish philosopher. He believes that one can know only what comes from the senses and experience. He said that man can only attain knowledge by experience. To him, the self is nothing but a bundle of impressions. For him, the self can be categorized into two, that is, impressions and ideas. The next is Immanuel Kant. He recognizes the veracity in Hume's that not everything starts with perception and sensation of impressions. Men must have a mind that organizes the impressions they get from the outside world. According to him, we all have an inner and outer self, which together form our consciousness. Immanuel Kant's famous line is that self is not just what gives one his personality, it also the seat of knowledge, a question for all human persons. Gilbert Ryle solves the mind-body dichotomy that has been running for a long time in the history of thought by denying blatantly the concept of an internal non-physical self. He said that self is not an entity one can locate and analyze, but simply the convenient name that people use to refer to all the behaviors that people make. Simply speaking, Ryle believed that self comes from behavior. We are all just a bundle of behaviors caused by the physical working of the body. Lastly, Maurice Merleau-Ponty. He considered that the physical body to be an integral component of the subjective self. He believed that the mind and body are inextricably linked, that they can't be separated. Inextricably means incapable of being disentangled or untied.